Hello, this is Angelia with today's Bible reading. Today's reading comes from Genesis 38, Judah and Tamar. And it came about at that time that Judah departed from his brothers and visited a certain Adulamite whose name was Hira. Judah saw there a daughter of a certain Canaanite whose name was Shua. And he took her and went in to her. So she conceived and bore a son, and he named him Then she conceived again, and bore a son, and named him Onan. She bore still another son, and named him Shelah. And it was at Chezib that she bore him. Now Judah took a wife for This is allergy day. His firstborn, and her name was Tamar. But Judah's firstborn, was evil in the sight of the Lord. So the Lord took his life. Then Judah said to Onan, Go in to your brother's wife, and perform your duty as a brother-in-law to her, and raise up offspring for your brother. Onan knew that the offspring would not be his, so when he went in to his brother's wife, he wasted his seed on the ground, in order not to give offspring to his brother. But what he did was displeasing in the sight of the Lord. So he took his life also. Then Judah said to his daughter-in-law Tamar, Remain a widow in your father's house until my son Shelah grows up. For he thought, I am afraid that he too may die like his brothers. So Tamar went and lived in her father's house. Now, after a considerable time, Shua's daughter, the wife of Judah, died. And when the time of mourning was ended, Judah went up to his sheep shearers at Timnah, he and his friend Hira the Adulamite. It was told to Tamar, Behold, your father-in-law is going up to Timnah to shear his sheep. So she removed her widow's garments, and covered herself with a veil, and wrapped herself, and sat in the gateway of Enaim, which is on the road to Timnah. For she saw that Shelah had grown up, and she had not been given to him as a wife. When Judah saw her, he thought she was a harlot, for she had covered her face. So he turned aside to her by the road, and said, Here now, let me come in to you. For he did not know that she was his daughter-in-law. Like, that makes it okay to still go to your whore. And she said, What will you give me, that you may come in to me? He said, Therefore I will send you a young goat from the flock. She said, Moreover, will you give a pledge until you send it? He said, What pledge shall I give you? And she said, Your seal and your cord, and your staff that is in your hand. So he gave them to her, and went in to her, and she conceived by him. Then she arose and departed, and removed her veil, and put on her widow's garments. When Judah sent the young goat by his friend the Adulamite to receive the pledge from the woman's hand, he did not find her. He asked the men of her place, saying, Where is the temple prostitute who is by the road at Enaim? But they said, There has been no temple prostitute here. So he returned to Judah, and said, I did not find her. And furthermore, the men of the place said, There has been no temple prostitute here. Then Judah said, Let her keep them, otherwise we will become a laughingstock. After all, I sent this young goat, but you did not find her. Now it was about 3 months later that Judah was informed, Your daughter-in-law Tamar has played the harlot, and behold, she is also with child by harlotry. Then Judah said, Bring her out, and let her be burned. It was while she was being brought out that she sent to her father-in-law, saying, I am with child by the man to whom these things belong. And she said, Please examine and see, whose signet ring and cords and staff are these? Judah recognized them, and said, She is more righteous than I, inasmuch as I did not give her to my son Shelah. And he did not have relations with her again. It came about at the time she was giving birth, that behold, there were twins in her womb. Moreover, it took place while she was giving birth. One put out a hand, and the midwife took and tied a scarlet thread on his hand, saying, This one came out first. But it came about as he drew back his hand, that behold, his brother came out. Then she said, What a breach you have made for yourself. So he was named Perez. Afterward his brother came out, who had the scarlet thread on his hand, and his name was Zerah. So, little bit of tomfoolery and, dishonesty on both sides there, which is not a good policy either way. Let's see what our biblical scholars have to say about this. The Judah interlude, as it is sometimes known, is bracketed by references to the sale of Joseph to Potiphar. Such a parenthesis in the Joseph story demands some reason why a chapter laced with wickedness, immorality, and subterfuge should be of necessity and be placed in this spot. The answer is that the events recorded are chronologically in the right place, being contemporary with the time of Joseph's slavery in Egypt. The account is also genealogically in the right place, with Joseph gone seemingly for good, with Reuben, Simeon, and Levi out of favor for incest and for treachery. Judah would most likely accede to firstborn status. It provides a contrast because it also demonstrates the immoral character of Judah, as compared with the virtue of Joseph. Canaanite syncretistic religion and inclusivism threatened to absorb the fourth and later generations of Abraham's heirs, but Egyptian exile and racial exclusionism provided not loss to their ethnic identity, but preservation of it. Adullamite. Adullam was a town about 1 mile northwest of Hebron. Judah's separation from his brethren was marked by more than the geographical. It involved integration. His Canaanite wife had 3 sons for his family line. 2 sons were executed by the Lord, one for unspecified wickedness, and one for deliberate and rebellious rejection of the duty to marry a relative's widow, called a levirate marriage. This was a rather dubious distinction for the line of Judah to gain. For details on levirate marriage, according to later Mosaic law, see the notes on Deuteronomy 25, 5 through 10. Remain a widow until my son. Taking her father-in-law at his word, and residing at her father's household as a widow would do, Tamar vainly waited for Judah's third son to protect the inheritance rights of her deceased husband. And finally resorted to subterfuge to obtain her rights. In so doing, she may have been influenced by Hittite inheritance practices, which wickedly called the father-in-law into levirate marriage in the absence of sons to do so. Timnah. The specified location in the hill country of Judah is unknown. Shear his sheep. Such an event was frequently associated, in the ancient world, with festivity and licentious behavior characteristic of pagan fertility cult practices. Feeling that no one was going to give her a child, Tamar resorted to disguising herself as a prostitute, obviously knowing she could trap Judah, which says little for his moral stature in her eyes. Yeah, needless to say. Judah's Canaanite friend Hira called her a temple prostitute, which made Judah's actions no less excusable just because cultic prostitution was an accepted part of Canaanite culture, because, it's not supposed to be of God's people culture. He solicited the iniquity by making the proposal to her, and she played the role of prostitute, negotiating the price. Your seal and your cord and your staff. A prominent man in the ancient Near East endorsed contracts with the cylinder seal he wore on a cord around his neck. Her request for the walking stick suggested also had sufficient identifying marks on it. Whose are these? The custom of using 3 pieces of identification is attested to in Ugaritic Canaanite literature. It was not good for one's reputation to keep asking for the whereabouts of a prostitute. Let her be burned. Double standards prevailed in that Judah, no less guilty than Tamar, commanded her execution for immorality. Later Mosaic legislation would prescribe this form of the death penalty for a priest's daughter who prostituted herself, or for those guilty of certain forms of incest. More righteous than I. This was not an accolade for her moral character and faith, but a commendation by Judah for her attention to inheritance rights of her family line and his shameful neglect thereof. Her death sentence was rescinded. Perez, this first of the twins, born of prostitution and incest to Tamar, nevertheless came into the messianic line, which went through Boaz and Ruth to King David. His name means breach, or pushing through. And let's look at our supporting scriptures. Leviticus 20:14. If there is a man who marries a woman and her mother, it is immorality. Both he and they shall be burned with fire, so that there will be no immorality in your midst. So, you're not supposed to be with a woman and her mother, both. So, I think there's a line in a Rod Stewart song that says you can bring your mama to you on the Hot Leg song. So, shame. But Deuteronomy 25:5. When brothers live together and one of them dies and has no son, the wife of the deceased shall not be married outside the family to a strange man. Her husband's brother shall go into her and take her to himself as wife and perform the duty of a husband's brother to her. It shall be that the firstborn whom she bears shall assume the name of his dead brother, so that his name will not be blotted out from Israel. But if the man does not desire to take his brother's wife, then his brother's wife shall go up to the gate to the elders and say, My husband's brother refuses to establish a name for his brother in Israel. He is not willing to perform the duty of a husband's brother to me. Then the elders of his city shall summon him and speak to him. And if he persists and says, I do not desire to take her, then his brother's wife shall come to him in the sight of the elders, and pull his sandal off his foot and spit in his face. And she shall declare, Thus is it done to the man who does not build up his brother's house. In Israel his name shall be called the house of him whose sandal is removed. So that was the punishment then. I don't know what the sandal thing means, but the spit in the face, I think everybody understands that. So, I personally wouldn't want that, but, I guess that was the thing then that, that's what they would do. But I would rather choose my own if mine was to go. So, 26:12. When you have finished paying all the tithe of your increase in the 3rd year, the year of tithing, then you shall give it to the Levite, to the stranger, to the orphan, and to the widow. that they may eat in your towns and be satisfied. And me and my husband, we tithe, 10% of our earnings, or as close as we can get. Some people really want you to do an exact amount that they want. So, we do as close as we can. Try to be cheerful givers. Ruth 4:18. Now these are the generations of Perez. To Perez was born Hezron, and to Hezron was born Ram, and to Ram Amminadab. Okay. And to Amminadab was born Nahshon, and to Nahshon Salmon, and to Salmon was born Boaz, and to Boaz Obed, and to Obed was born Jesse, and to Jesse David. So that's the lineage. That's why Perez became important to know, because he's the ancestor of King David. All right, Matthew 1:3. Judah was the father of Perez, and Zerah by Tamar. Perez was the father of Hezron, and Hezron the father of Ram. Ram was the father of Amminadab, Amminadab the father of Nahshon, Nahshon the father of Salmon. Salmon was the father of Boaz by Rahab. Boaz was the father of Obed by Ruth, and Obed the father of Jesse. Jesse was the father of David the king. David was the father of Solomon by Bathsheba, who had been the wife of Uriah. Solomon was the father of Rehoboam, Rehoboam the father of Abijah, and Abijah the father of Asa. Asa was the father of Jehoshaphat, Jehoshaphat the father of Joram, and Joram the father of Uzziah. Uzziah was the father of Jotham, Jotham the father of Ahaz, and Ahaz the father of Hezekiah. Hezekiah was the father of Manasseh, Manasseh the father of Amon, and Amon the father of Josiah. Josiah became the father of Jeconiah and his brothers at the time of the deportation to Babylon. After the deportation to Babylon, Jeconiah became the father of Shealtiel, and Shealtiel the father of Zerubbabel. Zerubbabel was the father of Abihud, Abihud the father of Eliakim, and Eliakim the father of Azor. Azor was the father of Zadok, Zadok the father of Achim, and Achim the father of Elihud. Elihud was the father of Eleazar, Eleazar the father of Mathan, and Mathan the father of Jacob. Jacob was the father of Joseph, the husband of Mary, by whom Jesus was born, who is called the Messiah. So there you go. That's why the whole Judah thing was important, because it led us, to Jesus. So that is the story of Judah and Tamar. Amen. Please like and share this word so we can spread it around the world. If you want to help me out, subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you want to help me out even more, go to my Patreon page and become a patron. Thanks for watching. That's all for now. Until next time.